Hi everyone, Peter van der Walt here. Before you pull the trigger on a property investment, you need to verify if it's a good deal. The fancy term for this is doing a due diligence. So I've put together a few pointers to consider next time when you're buying a property.
Right, let's look at the location with a couple of basic pointers. There needs to be high commercial and economic activity, growth, building activity, upgrades, modernization, those kind of things drive growth. So that's a nice primary factor to consider if you are looking at long-term property investment. So central must be quick, have quick access to major routes, as traffic plays a big role in determining locations where people relocate to these days. So access to major routes important. Quality schools, don't need any explanation. Shopping and convenience, lifestyle activities, and security. We live in South Africa, and I think the drive towards security estates is obvious. This is quite an important factor. So there's lots of property marketing companies these days that's focusing on rental factor, gross yield, and rent value ratio. So the two aspects with respect to income or with respect to return that I'm really interested in is net yield. That's a quick view of a primary indicator for me, and then obviously the comprehensive indicator is internal rate of return. So let me explain why I prefer net yield over rental factor, gross yield, and rent value ratio. So I've put together a small spreadsheet. Let's just go out there. So let's have a look at this. Here we are. So we've got a purchase price on a property is 1350, monthly rent, monthly levies, rates and taxes, commission to the rental agent, gross rent, I think that was on 8% plus VAT, gross rent, that's gross annual rent, net rent, that's net monthly rent, and net annual rent. So now let's look at the different indicators. Rent value ratio and rental factor is the monthly rent expressed as a percentage of the purchase price. So the monthly gross rent before any deductions as a percentage of the purchase price, and the notion there was we want to get as close to as possible to a 1%. That's the drive. Gross yield is, here's my gross yield. My gross yield is a gross annual rent. So my gross monthly rent times 12 as a percentage of the purchase price. And once again, I see many people using that figure because it's nice and high, so it looks very attractive. So remember, there's no expenses taken into account with that. And then the one that I prefer to use in this respect is net yield. What is my net yield? My net yield is my monthly rent less my operational costs, my levies, maintenance, management fees, rates and taxes, state agent fees. So that gives me a monthly net rental income, and I times that by 12, and I use that as a percentage of the purchase price. So on these figures, let's have a look. So my rent value ratio is 0.78. My gross yield is sitting at 9.33%. My net yield is at 7.06. So let me demonstrate why I like net yield. Now look at these three figures. What happens if I make my levies 5,000 Rand per month? Okay, my rent value ratio remained the same. My gross yield remained the same. My net yield had a significant reduction. More comprehensive due diligence exercise that I've done recently. Please note that we have an interest in two of these developments, Hasenal Estate, the links, and this one over here in Belleville. So I just wanted to clear that up front. I try to be as objective as possible. And but the nice thing about these kind of things is you can draw up your own spreadsheet and put your own numbers in what you're comfortable with. So this is my opinion based on my experience, and I obviously can make mistakes. Therefore, you're welcome to even give me a shout, come and chat. My door's always open for chats like that. Right, but the main thing for me with this exercise or these kind of exercises is one removes emotion, which is your biggest enemy when you are looking into property investment. What we do, many people is, you ask 3 or 4 questions. What's the location? What's the artist impressions look like? What's the rental income that's expected? And 1 or 2 other questions, and then you pull the trigger. And I think if you really want to de-risk the opportunity, then there's a lot more questions to ask. I think I've put down about 50 pointers here, and it's interesting. Something on face value might seem fantastic, but then you also need to look at, in my opinion, at least who's the developer. How long has he been in the industry as a developer? How many comparable projects has he completed as a developer before? It's vital, questions, in my opinion, that can really influence the success or failure of a property investment. So I'm not going to dive into them individually now. You're welcome to have a look at it and give me a shout. I've gone and highlighted the categories that I thought, the different developments won. I've highlighted them in green. So not all of them are, in my opinion, winnable categories. So I just went to look at a couple of interesting pointers, and I appointed winners there. So do your own screening, and let me know how yours goes. It'll be interesting to see. So what I've also done, I've extrapolated the main thing that we need to look at, but that's also influenced by assumptions. So let's assume we've used the correct assumptions, then the main indicators is internal rate of return. And after this, I've added a motion graphic where I took year 1 and year 5, the respective internal rate of returns for these various developments based on the 26 variables for each that we've used. So yes, let's dive right into that. So internal rate of return, this is after year 1, and interesting to note that Harsendal Estate, the links, what that would give us based on those assumptions that we've used, including universal 10.25% interest rate, finance at 90% finance over 20 years, and the other figures used in the comprehensive due diligence. This is the extrapolated information. As you can see, year 5, our winner again is the links right on top, and that's how the other developments compared. So have a look at that, put in your own figures, see where it takes you, and pull the trigger. The main indicator we've covered. Backing the wrong horse. So many people believe that if they buy property and in a development and it doesn't materialize for some reason, they haven't lost anything because they get their deposit back with interest, and they really haven't lost anything. It's a bit frustrating, but so is that true? So not quite right. I'd say it's half right. You get your deposit back with interest, but you lost the opportunity costs, the potential equity that would have been created if the property did, or the project did materialize. If project A was chosen and 24 months later didn't materialize and was preferred over analyzing a project B, C, and D, then the potential growth or equity was lost in comparison to a viable project that did materialize. So that's the opportunity cost. And therefore, it's important to back the right jockey or the right horse, as I've put here, that can deliver, that's got the finances, that's got the track record and the experience to actually deliver what was promised. So there's just a simple calculation based on 5% growth to give us an indication of opportunity costs. 1.3 million at 5% is 65,000 per annum times 2 years. So my opportunity cost here that I lost was 130,000. Trust but verify information provided, rental income expected. So don't just believe what the agent, and that are telling you, see how they get to the figure, and then phone around and see what people are saying about, what the information that was promised. And go on to Private Property 24, and do your own research. It's really not that hard. Check the developer's builder's track record, developer and builder's background, and check track record. We've discussed that. Ensure floor space is practical. I see that a lot. And also unique. I think we cover this in a point a little bit later on, but make sure that it's unique in the sense that it's desirable. I've seen some very, very poor designs that's just not practical. So even though the floor space is, a size that's comparable to competition, the one design is just not practical and obviously will be less desirable. And that is something to take into account. If you don't have experience or expertise in determining if it's practical, speak to pros. Speak to an architect. Speak to everyone knows someone in the real estate game that can give you opinions and get 3 or 4 opinions and make a decision based on that. So let's move on. Watch out for abnormalities. So when information is presented, things like operating expenses. If people are telling you the operating expenses is below 20% of the rental income expected, that's a question mark. It's a red light. So in all my time that I've dealt with sectional title apartments, especially new developments, I haven't seen, I think once I've seen a 20% of rental income, development. So it's generally around 25, 26, 27%. So obviously too high is bad, too low is bad. You want to make sure that it's reasonable, and also watch out for levies, subsidies, and, rental assistances and all those kinds of things. That's very attractive from a cash flow point of view, but just make sure that you take into account when those things fall away that you can still afford it, and that that the investment still makes sense. Solid security, we've discussed that, and I prefer when you are buying into a new development that the less rental agents and owners manage their own properties, the better quality control and accountability practices is possible. So because there's one set of screening rules, and people can be accountable. It's a lot easier to control. As soon as there's 10, 20, 30 people, then standards drop. That we've discovered over the years. I'm over 15 minutes, but I'm almost done. Preferably owners not doing their own letting, and we also discuss uniqueness in comparison to competition. Remember, it's not just the apartment, it's you in the business of competing with what is around to get the highest possible rent and the highest demand for your block of flats or your apartment that you bought there. So make sure that you're not penny wise and pound foolish. Sometimes I think people just go for price. This one is 50 or 60 or 70,000 rand cheaper than that one, but they didn't go and actually analyze at what is actually offered for that variance in amount in addition. And that little 50, 60, 70,000 rand can be a major factor in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years going forward. So please consider that.
Thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful and not too boring. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.